Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Malvi and today we're going to be talking about a build that I'm calling Righteous Fire at Home because it plays pretty similarly to Righteous Fire from Path of Exile, but with a lot less damage and a lot less survivability. So it's pretty much Righteous Fire at Home. I did have some gameplay footage that I streamed earlier today being Tuesday. But it saved to the wrong file format, and my video editor did not like it. So today we're going to be doing something different rather than my normal have gameplay on in the background with some images on front. We're just going to go through this via the game because I don't really feel like recording enough footage that I would need to do otherwise. So we're going to go through a quick echo super quick. I have already done this echo empowered. I did defeat the Emperor of Corpses, but again, the footage is lost. So you'll just have to, I guess, trust me. Yeah, without any further ado, let's start an echo. We'll go ahead and do the Reign of Dragons because this is the one I did earlier. So you'll at least be able to see my Gaze of Oribus that I earned. See, right there. In terms of gameplay, like I said, this does play very, very similarly to Righteous Fire, where you just end up with a lot of stacks of fire aura around you, but it is a lot more involved than Righteous Fire from PoE, because you rely a lot more on your damage skills in the form of Surge and Flame Reave to both keep your stacks of fire aura high and also make sure. I mean, they also just deal a lot of damage as well. So we'll get through this super quickly. Oh, it is up there. We rely mostly on ward for our defense. And you can see down here that we've got Flame Ward as well to provide a little bit of extra defense. Surge is primarily there for, well, I would say primarily there for movement, but that's actually a lie. It's there because there's the node in its skill tree that gives you dormant energy while it's on cooldown. And dormant energy you can turn into more fire aura stacks, which is, you know, just increases our damage by quite a bit more. Our primary DPS skill is Flame Reave, because it also has the highest chance to give you a fire aura on hit. And then we're going to back that up with both Enchant Weapon as well as Mana Strike to restore our mana. But you can see that at least in, you know, 100 Corruption, Echoes, our damage isn't horrible, both in terms of AoE and single target. A lot of that is because, like I said, our melee skills, Surge, Flame Reave, and even Mana Strike deal a significant amount of damage on their own. But yeah, you can kind of see from that what the general play style is. I will say that versus the Emperor of Corpses, we didn't really struggle as much as you kind of would expect from a build like this. Simply because we are so mobile with Surge and the haste that you get from Flame Ward, and we can just, you know, really pump up our health a lot with Ward. So we do handle bosses pretty well. But for now, we'll go over the skills, passives, and the items that this character is currently wearing. So, skills. We're going to go over Flame Reave first, because this is our primary DPS. We need to make sure that it both has the higher chance for Fire Aura, but then also doesn't cost so much mana that we cannot use it consistently. So we get that with Lingering Embers and then Dancing Flames. I like the additional Ignite chance as well, and you can see that because there's so much potential for Ignite scaling, like scaling damage or area or whatever based off of the amount of Ignites the opponent has. So we come down here. I have a +3 Flame Reave chest, so I use that to get the additional range for it because our range without this node is so low because of Dancing Flames, and you can see we've got a decent amount of range. The next skill we're going to talk about is Surge. Like I said, this is here mostly for movement, but also this is the best way to get Fire Aura stacks that we have other than just moving. With this, we can go from, I think the highest number of stacks I've ever hit was like 25. It does require quite a bit of effort to maintain that, though, especially if you're not, like, it's not just one tanky enemy, and it's a lot of, only somewhat tanky enemies, because you do have to essentially surge, stand there, and hit, and then surge again to get the Fire Aura stacks. So you can see we're going to using Storm Battery to get Dormant Energy. You only want enough points in this to be able to either always consistently hit max stacks or hit like just below it. So like with 4 points in it, my goal is either to hit 8 stacks or to consistently hit 7. Which I can do with the amount of attack speed I have, particularly versus a boss. Dormant Energy gives us damage per stack with Surge, which is, relevant, but not entirely why we do it. Instead, we do it for Fulmination, which whenever you consume a stack of Dormant Energy by using Surge, you get 100% Fire Aura chance per stack that you consume. So if we get 8 stacks, and then we Surge, then we get 8 Fire Aura stacks. I also do the Ward Gain per stack, just because it helps us, again, with our defenses quite a bit. We convert it to Fire, just so then that way we have as many consistent elements as we can get. And then Flame Reave on arrival. Generally, this will give you like a starting bonus stack of Dormant Energy, so that way you don't have to hit so consistently. Like if your damage is fine, and the echo's full of like small enemies, then you can just surge between packs of enemies and generally keep the extra Fire Aura stack. I do like this Shocking Blows, the flat melee damage, simply because it helps. Again, it just is a lot of damage, extra damage. You can also instead, if you want, go with Storm Aegis for ward gain on hit. This really depends on how much damage you feel you need, or how tanky you feel. Just cover whatever weakness you've got. The third skill, and actually the one that inspired me to try and make this build, is Flame Ward. Rather than going pure defense like I generally prefer, we are instead only picking up the ward per second and the ward retention that you get down here. And then we're going pure offense, essentially. We're grabbing it so that there's Fire Aura and some Fire Aura damage. This applies globally while Flame Ward is active. So whenever if you have like 20 stacks and you use Flame Ward, you go up to 21 stacks, and then all 21 of your stacks deal 15% extra damage while the Flame Ward is active for 4 seconds, which is really nice. We also are picking up some flat fire damage and haste while the Flame Ward is active. Again, so for a little bit of extra mobility, and then some extra damage is nice. And then we're grabbing Infusion, which grants increased fire damage while active. Again, this is just a lot of extra damage that you've got on button that is an instant cast spell. So Flame Ward is a really interesting balance between offense and defense capabilities in this build, which is why, as you'll see in equipment later, I think it's really important to get at least one extra charge of it. The fourth skill we're going to talk about is Enchant Weapon. This is, I think, a generally very powerful skill. If you're a Spellblade, you probably want Enchant Weapon somewhere in your build. My favorite, because I'm lazy, is coming down here on the lower right side with Concentration, Efficacy, and Kindling Blade for both increased duration to increase its uptime and to automatically recast it, because you want this up all the time anyway. So might as well go ahead and have it automated. For the rest of the points, I did come down here for a Burst of Fire, so then that way we have an extra spell to just scale a little bit more from our added fire damage or added spell damage and our fire damage increases. Stuff like this, especially where it's in a node that we're going to kind of want already, is super nice and super free. I also am grabbing all of the flat melee fire damage, as well as increased melee fire damage while active. Again, this just increases our damage by quite a lot, particularly with concentration, and any amount of CDR, cooldown recovery, is going to help this feel amazing. And then we're also grabbing celerity for attack speed while active. Again, attack speed is super important in this build. The more attacks you get off per second, the more fire auras you can stack up. And it also means that whenever you're moving around and attacking, it doesn't feel like you're taking forever, because we are using a two-handed weapon with a moderately slow attack speed. Our final skill is Mana Strike. And this is something that I've thought about a lot. I was actually using this as our primary skill and only using Flame Reave occasionally before I decided that it felt bad and was actually hurting our damage. So I thought about Focus, I thought about Mana Strike, I thought about Flame Brand, and then kind of what I decided on was Mana Strike, simply because Mana Cleave gives you some additional area, which is important for Mana Strike because the area on this skill sucks. Doubles the amount of mana you gain and gives you a cooldown. For skills that are not like primary DPS, I do like a little bit of a cooldown on them, just to give me a visual reminder of when about I should be using them again. For this, we're going to go with attack speed, some additional area, and then increased mana gained, because we are using it every 4 seconds. So it's important that you get as much mana out of it as you can. And then we will be doing global increased damage after using Mana Strike for 4 seconds, as well as global spell damage increased for 4 seconds after you use it. Alright, for our passives, they're remarkably straightforward. Even though we don't get to use as much defense as I would like from them, simply because so much has to be dedicated towards Fire Aura, but we make do. In the Mage class, we're only spending 20 points. We're grabbing the flat health, the intelligence, and then some ward, and some ward retention. Again, because we get so much ward from Flame Ward and just everything that the Spellblade kind of does, that any additional ward retention is fantastic. Moving on to the Spellblade tree. We're mostly sticking with everything that would give us some kind of scaling for our Fire Aura. We're going to just 5 points in Elemental Affinity for some Elemental Resist, but also the Elemental Damage. Flame Walker is super important. It's what lets the build feel kind of like Righteous Fire, where it automatically gives us about 4 fire aura stacks for free. We also need incinerating aura just for the additional fire aura base damage, and then also the fire aura area is super important. I like arcane shielding a lot. A pretty decent defensive skill since we are using melee attacks. So this basically gives us constant 10% less damage taken from hits is the important thing, and then some additional ward. Vitality is the primary reason we take this node. The melee fire damage, the flat melee fire damage, is a nice bonus. Mana Reaver is important, not only for the health, but also the chance to gain mana. Can really add up and lets us prolong our use of Flame Reave for that much longer if Mana Strike is on cooldown or we are otherwise unable to use it. Burning Hands, the primary reason we take this node is for the fire aura chance on hit. 20% is 20%, I guess. So it is limited to only melee attacks, which is kind of unfortunate. And then we're going to grab Flame Drinker. This gives us fire aura per second per stack of fire aura. Like I said, like maintaining like 6 or 7 is pretty trivial. Maintaining 15 or so is doable with some effort, and then versus like bosses or high health like really high health enemies, getting up to about 20 or so to 25 is perfectly doable. We're going to grab Mental Fortitude and its pair Prodigy, just for the intelligence, as well as the word per second. Gives quite a lot of word per second. Again, word is our primary defense. Outrun and Outlast gives us health, gives us ward retention, and then gives us some cooldown recovery speed for Surge. The cooldown recovery speed for Surge is great. Just again, keep in mind that you need to adjust the stacks of dormant energy that you get from Surge, depending on how many you can maintain. So, if in lowering the cooldown for Surge, you could no longer get up to the max stacks consistently, then take a point out of that node and put it in something else. So then that way you're not wasting any points. The final node I've got points actively invested in at the moment is Burden of Knowledge. This is mostly just for this is only for the flat spell damage. The reduced cast speed doesn't really matter because all of our spells are cast automatically. Flame Ward is an instant buff. Enchant Weapon is an instant buff. Surge, Flame Reave, and Mana Strike are all attacks. And attack and cast speed doesn't matter for procced stuff like the Fire Aura or the Flame Burst from Flame Reave. I'm obviously not level 100 yet. My next plan for points is... Where did it go? I want to grab Essence Duel for the attack speed and the ward. And then also Arcane Warden, again for ward gained on hit with melee attacks. Again, ward is our primary defense. It's basically extra health, so we want to get as much of it as we can from whatever sources we can get. Itemization. There's really only 2 pieces of equipment that I think are... There's one piece of equipment that I think is super necessary. There's one that if you have an Exalt, a good enough Exalt, you can replace it. And then and then it's just getting a little bit lucky on everything else. So the best piece of equipment you can use, I think, is Volcanus. Um, Only because of the fire damage leached his health. 7% is a lot of fire damage leached his health, particularly since we deal so much fire damage. With Volcanist, you can pretty easily go from, only 10% health back up to full in just a couple of seconds. So, getting Volcanist is super important. If you have one with LP, then that's fantastic. I would probably go with fire damage, like try and exalt or craft like fire damage or elemental damage onto it over flat melee damage. I forget whether or not you can have flat spell damage on a two-handed sword, but if you can, then that's great. But again, just fire damage, elemental damage, spell damage if you can. Beyond that, it doesn't really matter. Ignite chance is, nice. The second, more optional unique is Malin's Hubris. That's not how you say that word. 3 out of the 4 stats that you innately get on this are great for us with the fire damage over time, vitality, and intelligence. If you can get a legendary potential one, then, round out your defense or get more damage over time, or intelligence like I have, or vitality. There's a lot of options you can get on your gloves that will really make your life a lot easier. I'm not going to go over every piece of equipment I've got, simply because so much of it is dependent on luck, like getting +3 Flame Reeve chest, Exalted chest, or tier 7 movement speed with a max roll. That's just luck. The only other thing that I'm going to note is getting mana regen. I have the mana regen on this ring and on my belt. Getting mana regen to a decent enough point where you can, swing with Flame Reeve for 4 seconds in a row very, very comfortably between your mana strikes, because you also have to account for using Flame Ward, which costs not a lot of mana, but some amount of mana, and then Surge, which uses, again, not a lot of mana, but a decent amount of mana, particularly given its relatively low cooldown, and you're going to want to be using Flame Reeve and Flame Ward between them. You can run out of mana pretty quickly. So getting a comfortable amount of mana regen so that way you don't run out is super important. Beyond that, defenses are huge. As always, try and make sure your resistances are maxed out. Try not to do what I did and end up with like 150% extra lightning resistance. Definitely trade that out somewhere. The culprit is this at the moment. But yeah, just try and make sure your resists are maxed out. If you can grab armor, then grab armor. If you can grab dodge chance, then grab dodge chance. We are not really scaling strength or dexterity, so these can be hard to get up high enough that you're going to really feel their effects. Obviously, we don't have a shield, so you don't really have any block chance. So my advice is worry first about your resistances, because we're going to have enough ward that it's going to make up for a little bit of a lack of health. Once you get your resistances in a comfortable spot, then start trading out things for health, or armor is probably better than dodge for us. So if you can get dodge via dexterity, then that's also good, because then that scales Surge and Flame Reeve and such. So yeah, defense is a really kind of weird balance for this build. But that's pretty much all I have to say about it. In terms, actually, we'll talk about idols for a brief moment. Idols are something that I haven't quite figured out for this build in particular. I started with the plan of going with chance to cast Fire Aura on crit on, 4 separate 2x2s, kind of like you would with the chance to cast Smite on throwing hit for the Sentinel. But that actually doesn't feel amazing because we're not getting crit chance anywhere else because it doesn't do anything. The way I initially was planning on addressing that was to use Mana Strike's base crit chance, because you can get a plus 40% base crit chance for a crit chance of a base of 45, which is a lot for essentially no room taken on your equipment. But then that kind of requires you to be using Mana Strike a lot, which does not feel amazing. You could also use like Precise Destruction and Chaos Flare in the Flame Reeve tree, but that's not a lot of crit chance. This is what a combined total of like 20% crit chance, which is not a lot unless you invest a lot of extra points in increased critical strike chance on your equipment, which is not something that is going to feel very good, I think. So, Scarper that. The only reason this is here is because I need the cold resist. I think probably the better thing, rather than scaling any kind of Fire Aura damage or anything on this, is actually just to go purely defensive in your idols to make up for all the points that you have to spend in your passive tree working on offense. Blessings. I'll show you what I've got right now. Probably the best thing is going to be getting resists where you can from your blessings, as always. With maybe the exception of your elemental resists, because you can get so many kind of for free, particularly fire. Like, you shouldn't get a fire resist blessing because you have like a ton from your tree. And like in my case, I have a ton of lightning resist, so I don't need this blessing from Lagon. So I would trade that out for something else, mana, or like anything really. I don't know exactly what his blessings are. So yeah, that's kind of my thought on blessings, is resists, make up your resists with your blessings to free up your equipment. But if you don't need that particular kind of resist, then, obviously grab something else, so that way you're not having 234% lightning resist whenever you're capped at 75. As always, try and get critical strike avoidance somewhere. In this case, I have the bulk of it from the Emperor of Dragons blessing. The ones that I was offered after beating his empowered one were kind of crap, particularly because I don't need the necrotic resist. I don't deal necrotic damage. I don't really want the melee damage leached to health, and I don't care about poison resistant shred. So yeah, always just use your blessings for defense, is my general advice to you. But I think that's gonna call it for this video. It ended up being a lot longer because, again, I lost a lot of my footage, and so my normal plan is kind of shot. But thanks for watching. I really appreciate your support. This build is interesting. I don't think that it's going to be, you're not going to push really high into corruption with this at all. I just don't think the damage is there. I don't think your survivability is there. But it's fun. If you liked Righteous Fire in Path of Exile or similar playstyles, then it's a good time. I had fun leveling it up. I had fun working out and solving some of the problems that it has. And I hope you enjoy it as well. So again, thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, or enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the build, please like and subscribe here on YouTube. I also stream on Twitch, as you've probably heard me complain about several times in this video. Typically I don't lose my footage, but I did this time. So check me out there if you want to see the build process in action. I typically stream whatever build I'm working on there, so you can have your own input. And then let me know in the comments down below if you tried this build or you're interested in trying this build. And if you have any suggestions for ways to make this build better, please let me know, because I do want this build to work. Currently, I just don't see how, and that could be just a lack of experience with the game or a lack of willingness to invest as much time into the build as it might need. But again, thanks for watching, and have a nice day.